Hi, I'm Pastor Tay of the Titus 2 Ministry and PastorTay.com. Welcome to Espresso. It's an interactive Bible study that is like espresso, strong and smooth. Enjoy the taste. Good evening. I'm Pastor Tay, founder of the Titus 2 Ministry. Welcome to Titus 2 Marriage Builders. And tonight is Talk Live Tuesday. We've been running this program for about 3 years now, and we're excited to continue to offer you resources and insights and conversation, because this is a live presentation. So we invite you to jump on board, and if you are watching this, please drop a comment, ask a question, and more importantly, say hello. And tell me who you are, your name, and your state or country, continent, wherever you are. And so we're about to begin, but before we jump into the material for tonight, I want to set it up for you by saying that this is Talk Live Tuesday, and this program is archived in a tab called Units. And if you're watching this on a mobile device, and you can watch this on a replay if you don't catch it live, and still put in your comments and questions. But these videos, these resources are archived in a tab called Units, and that tab, pointing above, if you're watching this on a mobile device, is right above you. Just scroll up a little bit and you'll see it there. If you're watching this on a laptop or desktop, that Units tab is to your left. Okay, so go check it out, because there's about 3 years of resources, and in fact, the marriage resources are organized into 4 major categories, the big 4. And most of the marriage issues can be organized into these 4 categories. They are communication, okay, conflict, in-laws, and sex. These are the top 4 areas. And so what we have been doing is we have been organizing all the materials, and basically, every Tuesday we've been rotating these topics. So communication 1 week, then conflict, in-laws, sex, and then once we're done, we go right back to the top and continue to work through the rotation and provide for you. And I was looking at that Units tab recently, and there's just a lot of good stuff there. Not just me, but we have other teachers, and please enjoy and be blessed by them. And you can jump into those old videos and still make comments and questions, and that's a good thing, because what it does is it brings it back to life, puts it back into the home feed, and then others can be reminded of that as well. Another good thing about having a Units tab and archiving all the previous material is that I don't have to review everything. You can always go back and check the previous one, and no matter what topic we're on, you can always be brought up to speed by checking out the previous ones in your own convenience. So tell me, if you're watching this, please say hello, and we'd love to hear from you. And again, the reason why we're doing this live is to have a conversation. And you know what? This period of time is very difficult. I know, with the world crisis right now, the virus, and how it has impacted a lot of people. And so, you know what, I'm just thinking that it could actually lead to a spike in conflict and tension in your marriage. And so we want to continue to provide resources that you can access in your own time. And everybody being stuck at home, your life might be a little crazy right now. So we hope that you benefit from the resources. And so where we are tonight is sex. Okay, so that's a little pinky there, meaning we covered communication, conflict, in-laws, and then sex. So that's where we are in our schedule, the rotation. And tonight, thinking about sexual conflict. In fact, that's what we've been talking about for a few sessions or conversations now, and I just want to pick up where we left off, and not going to review. That stuff is already archived for your convenience. But we've been talking about this larger topic of conflict, okay? Granted, we have a topic called conflict resolution, right? That's the second one out of the four. But we have a large category called sex, and within that, we're doing this little mini series on sexual conflict because sexual relationship is not that easy. It can get complicated. In fact, as problems arise in your life and in your marriage, that can manifest itself into sexual conflict as well. And so we're working our way through, and we're on a big topic of conflict, and underneath that, we're talking about gender differences, okay? And gender differences is a huge category when it comes to sexual conflict, because we're talking about a man and a woman, husband and wife, that is, and two different genders, and the two different genders being just so different. It can become a source of tension unless you appreciate and really work things through. So in the previous video, we started this little subtopic of gender differences and how it leads to conflict, and we're going to continue some of that today, and assuming that gender plays a major role, okay, when it comes to conflict. So we're talking about conflict, we're talking about gender differences, and we're just pushing our way through the categories there. Please drop your comments and your questions, give me a thumbs up, and tell me that you understand. And tonight, the subtopic is assuming that your approach is correct. Now we're talking about conflict. We're talking about gender differences. And you mix those two things together, and the reality is sometimes you interpret the conflict, okay, listen, you interpret the conflict from your point of view, okay, from your gender. That's kind of getting more specific. So when we're talking about conflict, one of the more natural things, and in this case, I'm not saying it's right. It's natural, but it's not right. It's natural to just think of your conflict from your point of view, and then what do? You assume that your approach, your way of looking at it, again, gender, whether you're a man or a woman, you're looking at it and saying, why are you like that? Okay. In other words, you're assuming that you're correct, and then the other person is wrong. So that's what we're talking about tonight. And I'm going to say this is one of the most basic problems when it comes to conflict, and more specifically, sexual conflict, is you see the situation through your own interpretation and just assume that that's the right standard. And then what do? You cast judgment on your husband or your wife, and then you say, what's wrong with you? Why can't you see it this way? And if you really think about it, this manifests itself in so many ways, but let's stay focused on sexual problems here. So we're talking about your gender. We're talking about how a woman, for example, and we covered this in the previous video, go check that out, how a woman is much more relational. Certainly not a criticism, okay? She understands intimacy better. But the truth also is she lacks drive, okay? The drive is just not as high as a man. Now the man, he is much more physical, always in the mood, ready to go. And he has a lot of drive. We covered those things last week, and we said, I'm sorry, not last week, but in the last video on sexual conflict, and we said that it was a great mystery as to why we're generally configured that way. But my point tonight is that you could easily, from your point of view, let's say a woman being more relational, okay, and more, intuitive and understanding intimacy and all of that so much better, might look at a man and say, what's wrong with you? Okay, why are you like that? Why are you a pervert? A lot of guys have heard that accusation, and a guy said, what? I'm what? And so this is the kind of thing when you look at it, and we can now say from the man, okay, that him being always ready to go, he could look at a woman and say, how come you're never in the mood? Don't you care? and make it into something very personal. So you see, if you as a man or you as a woman begin to cast judgment on the other person and assume, that's what our conversation is about tonight, assume that your way is right, okay? Your standard is right. And then what? The other person is automatically wrong because now you say, you should be doing this, or you should be doing that, but why are you like that? And so that can spin off into all kinds of just tensions and conflicts. And so one of the takeaways tonight is to take a hard look at how you're casting judgment. Take a hard look at how you are assuming things, okay? You know, our authority, okay, meaning how we come up with our set of conducts and how we should behave and ultimately how we should make peace, should come from Scripture. Scripture is our authority. Scripture is sufficient. There's a lot of freedom when it comes to other things. But if you take those other things and set them in cast iron and say, this is the way, and why aren't you living up to this standard? The man who says, "Why? How come you're never in the mood? You know, why aren't you like that?" What he's really saying is, why aren't you like more like a man? Okay, he fails to understand that the woman is wired differently, or the woman saying, "Why are you always like that?" Fails to understand that a man is built differently, and so that may raise a lot of other questions, but that's fine. Drop them in the comment section, and we'll deal with them. And by the way, that's why we have so many videos. And that's why this Talk Life Tuesday, just goes on and on, because, there's so many spin-off issues like, well, what about this? Or what about that? And so we're just going to have to talk forever about a lot of these things and begin to systematically address all these issues. But my point again is that if you just say, you should be this way, or you should be that way, or how come you just want to do it for yourself, and so a woman fails to then realize, a lot of the sensitivities and the desires and the needs for the man, and vice versa. The man forgets many of the important things about a marriage. And please understand and review the previous video, because I actually gave a lot of credit to women for understanding some of the deeper truths of sexual relationship. Yes, women generally have a lesser drive, but I think overall they understand, the relational aspect of it, the intimacy aspect of it better than men. Okay, anyway, with that in mind, just keep in mind how much we criticize each other, just assuming that the other person should be just like you. And that is just not the case. If you go down that route, it's a very dangerous path to walk on, because ultimately, in its worst form, okay, tell me if you understand this. In its worst form, it can be selfishness, okay? Because when you keep casting judgment based on your own perspective, it can be selfishness, because you're saying, I'm right. I'm right when it comes to the way we should have sex, and you're wrong. You're just a pervert, or you're just not understanding it, or, why are you never in the mood? Or, that's when troubles lie. And it comes from a place of selfishness as you rise up as the judge and say, it's me. I'm the one that sets the standard. I'm the one that understands this better. And so watch out. In its worst form, it can be selfishness, okay? So that can be a very big problem. Not only that, as you are, and here's a second major problem that it can lead to when you continue to assume that you're right and the other person is wrong, is that it can really lead to unmet expectations on both sides, okay? Because both of you have expectations of how it should be, what the experience should be. And as you're constantly pointing a finger, and that should remind you, by the way, of Matthew chapter 7, when Jesus says, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? And so that's another problem, by the way. But I was trying to develop the point before I got sidetracked. Is it can lead to all kinds of unmet expectations as you cast judgment, and the other person feels like, okay, this is not what I signed up for. And so what a rude awakening that you get married, and even after a few years, sex can be a really awkward and difficult and tension-filled relationship experience. And so unmet expectations. That reminds me of James chapter 4, verse 1, where James says, why do you fight? Isn't it because of the desires of your heart? And he's talking about many of the conflicting and the selfish desires that are in your heart, and experts understand that as unmet expectations that are welling up in your heart and then boils over and spills over into your relationships. And so selfishness, blame shifting, looking at the plank in your spouse's eye, unmet expectations. These are all the spin-offs that can be related to what we're talking about tonight, gender differences, and just assuming you're right and then just blame the other person for everything. And so then unmet expectations, it can lead to anger, it can lead to bitterness, it can lead to distance, like you don't want to be close to each other anymore, and it can lead to a loss of hope. I guess, ladies, I want to say to you that there can come a point after so much finger pointing, and again, I'm not blaming you for everything, but I'm saying a man can just lose hope. And so he may not have the desire anymore. And guys, I want to tell you that if you approach sexual conflict and continue to condemn her for, how she is, and look at it through your own set of eyes, she can lose hope too. And she can even get angry and say, you know what? I'm shutting it down. I don't want to have sex with you. And so all of these things, okay, can just begin to build, and you can get to a point, okay? So what are we going to do? The problem seems so complex. And by the way, that's why there's so many videos inside the archive, the units tab on sex, because they're intended to cover many of these complexities. So you want to go back and watch them. And, there are a lot of people that watch them together because the videos can prompt good discussion. And that's a good way to get out of a difficult situation fast, okay? And so selfishness, we talked about unmet expectations. I'm looking at the clock and time flies. So I'm going to come to an end of this conversation. And, just want to encourage you to join into the conversation, okay, which would have stretched this out even longer. But I know you guys are busy. I hope you access it later and benefit from it. But as I said, unmet expectations, selfishness, anger, bitterness, distancing, losing hope, refusal to have sex, all because you're now looking at it through your own lens and just assuming that the other person is wrong. Well, in closing, I want to mention Philippians chapter 2, where, there was a lot of conflict in the church there. And the Apostle Paul commends to them more of an attitude of humility when he says, esteem others better than yourself. In other words, one of the reasons why you fight is because you think you know it all. You think that your way of looking at it is the better way. And isn't that what we're talking about tonight? You think your way is the better way, okay? And so as you look at it that way, and I'm talking to both the husband and the wife, that it's not going to get resolved. Well, how is it going to get resolved? Through esteeming others better than yourself, meaning take a break. Take a break from the selfishness, the unmet expectations, and the assumptions that the other person is wrong, but esteem others, meaning look at the situation from their point of view. Not easy, but that's kind of the first step towards conflict resolution, right? In this case, sexual conflict. Is you look at the other person's point of view. You do that because there's something valid there. You do that because there are things to learn there. Okay? And so I'm going to say that when you do that, esteeming others, you are employing humility. And humility is the basis for conflict resolution. So tonight, I end by saying take a break from all the assumptions and condemnations and judgment, but esteem others better than yourself. In this case, your partner, your wife. By the way, I'm using the word partner in the biblical sense because the Bible uses that word in Proverbs chapter 2, Malachi chapter 2. And so your spouse, okay, and look at her and look at him with humility, and may that help you in resolving the conflict. Well, that's it for tonight. We're going to continue this conversation on sexual conflict when we get back to the rotation, okay? But we are back to the top of the rotation. Remember, the rotation is communication, conflict, in-laws, and sex. So we just finished our our conversation tonight on sex. And so next Tuesday, we're back to the top, and we're going to continue to add another installment on communication. I hope that helped you. If you're watching this on a replay, please drop your comments and your questions, and continue to work on your marriage. Blessings, everyone.
Thanks for joining us for a devotional drink today. If you love Espresso, click here to subscribe so you know when the next one is ready to enjoy. Visit our website for resources for every chapter of your life. And if you're thirsty for more, click here. See you next time. May God bless your day.